Welcome back to my gathering basket. My name is Danelle, and this is my little crafting, homesteading, making corner of YouTube. I'm coming to you from Southwest Missouri, and I have a few things to show you today. If you joined me in the last episode, you know I was under the gun to finish a crocheted Afghan, which, happy crochet month. I'm not sure when or how long. March has been National Crochet Month, but apparently it is. So any excuse to celebrate fiber arts, I'm okay with it. And I have been doing a lot of crocheting. Back to the Afghan. Several of you commented on the Afghan adventure. I had 10 days to finish a worsted weight fisherman Gansey inspired Afghan for a designer. And I finished. Barely. I used all of those 10 days, but it is successfully in the mail, all 10 pounds of it. It was a beautiful Afghan when it was all done, but it was definitely a nice cozy winter Afghan. The yarn that I used was the Plymouth Encore. It's a very nice 75% acrylic and 25% wool, yes. I've used this, actually I did a sweater in this one time, and it turned out, it's a very light yarn for just kind of basic, it's one that I work with a lot, and I do really kind of enjoy it. If I have to do an acrylic, this is usually a top choice for me. So that was what consumed just about all of my crafting time in the last 2 weeks. I had a few days before, while I was waiting for the yarn to come, where I was able to finish up some projects, and then a few days, I will admit, when I got that in the mail, I think I spent the next 24 hours just kind of flat in my recliner. When I came home from work, I didn't even want to pick up a hook or needle. But once I recovered from that, I've actually gotten quite a bit done. One thing, and I did show this one sock, but here is the pair of socks that I did. This is a Regia yarn that's discontinued. I don't even know the name of it, but I really like how the striping, the Regia striping, is always fun to see. And this is the one, if you remember from the first one, it has this padded heel. So what you would traditionally see as the heel flap with a slip stitch pattern or an eye of partridge. This is just a slip stitch, but the designer on this one had, and I think she just said she reverse engineered it and flipped it so that she had that slip stitch part underneath the heel, which gave it some padding. So I have worn these once and washed them, and my main concern, I wanted to have a chance to wear them before I talked about them as a finished object, so that's why I did, because I wanted to see if this padded heel felt funny. I usually wear out my socks down here instead of back here, so this just made sense for me. But I wasn't sure how that would actually feel on my foot. So I am happy to report that I wore these all day at work, and I could not tell the difference between this padded heel and just a regular heel. So I'm really curious. I have notes made on this in my little knitter's notebook, and I'm really curious to see if the wear is different, because if so, I will be repeating this. I don't have a pattern to link. This was designer's notes that she emailed to me through I think it was I don't remember if it was a Facebook or a Ravelry discussion we were having about heels, and she said, well, I have this pattern that I've come up with, and she was talking about publishing it as a recipe on Ravelry. I need to send her my feedback now that I've had a chance to wear them, and hopefully she will go ahead and publish those notes. She said I did these as a toe up version, and she said she also has a cuff down version of her notes too. So I'm really hoping she does go ahead and publish that. I think it's a great idea. So I got those done, and then I had told you also here a while back that I really needed some pot holders, and I was hoping to do some pot holders in crochet. So I finally had a chance to do that. This is what I call the magic pot holder. story behind this. This is like so basic. Everybody's probably seen these. I'm probably like, I took this to some of my other friends that are knitters and crocheters, and they, every one of them said, oh yeah, I learned how to do that when I was little. I didn't, but I wanted to. And the story behind this is just a cotton, this is Hobby Lobby, I love this cotton. It is a double-sided pot holder, just single crochets, simple as all get out. I have a hard time with crochet or with cotton yarn in general. A lot of people say that it's not elastic, so it's a little bit harder on your hands, and I've definitely found that to be true. So I don't tend to sit down and crochet with cotton for long periods of time. If I had just done this from start to finish, it wasn't a very long project. I did it over the course of a couple days, just here and there, a few rounds. But when I was a little girl, we had friends that were kind of stand-in grandparents for us. We had a lot of those where I grew up. I grew up on the East Coast, and my grandparents were here in Missouri, so I didn't have that next door grandma. And so there were several couples in our church that were willing to stand in that. And Florence was one of them, and she was a wonderful crafter. She was actually the one that taught me how to quilt. The first time. She was babysitting me one night, and I commented on her quilted pot holders. They were just very simple 4-patch scraps that she had gone ahead and pieced together and quilted on her sewing machine. And she said, well, you can do that. And I don't know, I was probably in the vicinity of 6 or 7 years old, and she took me upstairs to her sewing room and let me pick some fabric scraps, and we quilted. I felt so big when she let me do that. And when Mom and Dad came to pick us up that night, I said, look what I did. I was so proud of it. But she had a lot of these crocheted pot holders that she would use, and you know, we went over to her house for supper, and she'd have a pan of something on the table sitting on one of these pot holders, and I knew just enough about crochet that I was fascinated because these are made in one piece. Here's the start. So there's my chain, and then I knew that it was in rounds, and I could tell that the rows were going this way. But if you flip it over, the rows are going this way, and there's the seam in the middle. Okay, as an adult, that's not overly impressive. But when you're like 6, that was pretty cool. I couldn't quite get it visualized, and bless her, Florence would give me just enough hints. She wanted me to figure it out on my own. So she never showed me how to crochet it, but honestly, every time I went over to her house for years, I would take this and I'd be pulling it apart and trying to figure out, how did you get that together? I was just sure it was 2 pieces, and she was tricking me. And she said, nope, it's magic. And finally, 40 years later, I'm thumbing through Ravelry looking at pot holders, and I found this pattern. It was just called crochet dishcloth, or crocheted pot holder. And I will link to the pattern below. And the person that put the pattern recipe on Ravelry said, this isn't my pattern. This has been around for years, but in case you don't know how this is made, and I didn't. So I started, and I did alter the pattern just a little bit for size. The first one, as the pattern was written, actually was just a little bit too small for me. Probably my gauge, but I wanted it a little bit bigger. So I did rip out a whole one and start over. I believe in the pattern it called for a size C hook, and I actually used an I hook. And this is, like I said, Hobby Lobby. I love this cotton, and I really, it's being double thickness, and it's very soft, but I've used it a couple times already, and heat is not getting through that to your hands. So very happy to have this done. I put a little hanger on the end of it, just a little crochet loop, and I am hoping to make a whole bunch of these. Hobby Lobby was having a sale on their yarn, so I stocked up on several colors that will go with my kitchen. Everything in my kitchen is done in kind of 1930s reproduction fabrics. So I got a bunch of different bright colors, reds and blues and teals and greens and pinks and yellows, and I hope to do a whole bunch of these. And I have a little shelf that I can hang them on. That's why I did the little hanger, and I think they will be very useful but also decorative as well. So like I said, I don't know why it took me 40 years to put one together, but I am so happy to have my magic pot holder now. So there's my first crocheted item, and then oh, I've got a whole table full of stuff here, and which one do I do next? Okay, since we're on crochet, I have been working really hard on the Master Crochet program. I was nearly done, and yes, that's past tense, because I was going through all of my swatches and sure enough found some mistakes and some things that just weren't as good as I wanted them to be. So because I had that 2 weeks that I was kind of off and working on the Afghan, I had a chance to go back and look at them with fresh eyes, which is always a good thing. And I totally intended to do that before I shipped it off. But because I hadn't labeled all of my swatches, I wanted to get them all blocked correctly and all of that, and then tie on the final tags. So I was working on that process just the other night and found a couple things I didn't like. So I have a couple actually on the floor on the other side of the camera that are blocking again, and then several others that I'm gonna have to redo. So I was pretty annoyed with my crocheting, and I just needed to do something simple that I didn't have to worry about gauge and all of that. So, and I was at a point where I was kind of, Afghan was done, it was time to think about new projects, and yet I didn't really have anything I was ready to go with. I've told you I've had several sweaters to knit that I've had I've tried swatching, I have changed hooks, I've changed patterns, and just like nothing was working out. And I think that Master Crochet notebook just kind of pushed me over the edge. So I was trying to find some new projects to work on, and nothing was just clicking. Meanwhile, it's just about time for Lent to start. Now, I'm not from a church tradition that really did a lot with Lent, so this was kind of something new for me. But there were a bunch of people talking on some of the homestead groups that I'm on Facebook, and coming up with some really good ideas. And the more I thought about it and kind of participated in some of those conversations, the more I got to thinking about maybe I'll try just something little this year. And my idea, of course, I was knitting and listening to some podcasts that were talking about this, and I thought, you know, what is probably more valuable to me than my stash and my creating time? So, and I don't want this to sound as like I'm trying to convince other people to do this, or this is not something I was meditating on for a long time and have a perfect idea. This was literally like the Wednesday, the first day of Lent, and I was sitting in my recliner, and this was kind of like, hey, I'm gonna try this and see what happens. So what I decided to do was come up with some small things, because that's just kind of where my brain space is right now. And some small things that I could do at least an average of 1 item a day during the season of Lent that I could then donate. And trying to pick things that have a lot of meaning to me. For example, the first one, and I actually have already given this one away. I have had a number of family members and lots of friends. I have a lot of elderly friends, and many of them have either passed away or are now in care for different forms of dementia. There's a lot of different forms of dementia, not just Alzheimer's. And my grandmother was one of those. She actually had a brain cyst, and it led to dementia type behavior. My grandfather had Alzheimer's. So I was, again, tooling around Facebook and found this article about a snuggle bear, I think is what it was called. Just a little tiny, I think it was 4 to 5 inches tall, made in one piece and seamed together in the back, stuffed, and it had, it almost looked, I tried to get a picture, but I don't have a good picture to show you. It had like I-cord arms. So it was just one loop. So you had this little stick, kind of stick figure bear. With an I-cord loop. And the point of it was that loop, almost like I don't want this to sound condescending, but almost like a baby rattle, where you could put that loop over the person's hand, and you had a toy to play with. It was soft, but it wasn't going to drop. You didn't need that hand dexterity to hold on to this little bear. So I took it to a cousin of mine who works at our local nursing home and showed it to him and said, do you think this would really work? I mean, it's pretty simple. Do you think it would be something that any of your residents would find helpful? And he looked at it and said, well, yeah, I think so. So I said, all right, I'll knit you one and let you give it a try. So I did knit. It took me all of an hour and probably 100 yards maybe of cotton yarn. And again, I made it with cotton because it can be thrown in the industrial washer and should be just fine. So I made one of those up real quick and took it to him the next day and said, here, give it a try with some of your residents and let me know. If it works, I will gladly make a bunch more. That was the first of that was kind of the idea that spurred this whole, if I can find 40 different, not different, but 40 things that I can do during the season of Lent. Like I said, a lot of my friends have been impacted with dementia. So this is something that, if you've heard of the prayer shawls, many of us have done that. I have done that in the past. And the whole idea being, while you create that, it's a chance to focus on praying for either a specific person or a group of people. So that's kind of been what this has been for me. Just very simple projects that I don't have to think really hard about, and gives me a chance to pray while I'm doing that. So that has been it's only been right at a week at this point, just under a week. So I'm really enjoying it so far. But while I wait to find out whether those little snuggle bears are going to be a good idea or not, I've been working on some other projects that can go to our guild projects. We have several donation type branches in our guild that we kind of just do ongoing. And I think I've talked about the Winter Warmies program, where we do hats and mittens and scarves that we distribute through local schools. I will probably be doing some more of those, just because I do have some leftover from that Afghan, and I think this would be great. I may dye some of this just so I'm not doing a whole bunch of white hats, but I may use that up. And then another one we do, if you've heard of the octopus for preemies. This is, and I'll put a link to a couple, at least one of the patterns. I'm actually not following the pattern right now. I'm more on that. But these are what they look like. And right now, in the light and all that, he's looking a little bit more like a creepy ghost than an octopus. But he's got a goofy little face. The mouth sewn on, and then these little eyes that are crocheted and sewn on. But the reason that the whole idea behind the octopus is you have a premature baby in a NICU bassinet, and typically there are lots of cords. So they will put these in, and there's a whole story behind it that's kind of neat, that's in the pattern. I'll link below. But basically what they think is babies will latch on to these because they remind them of an umbilical cord. And you see a lot of pictures where these have been introduced into the incubators, and you'll see a little fist over this. It's really cute. And a couple of the most local NICU that I have to me is about an hour away. But we do have several people in our guild that work at both of those hospitals, and we got requests for people in our guild to make these for them. So I had not had a chance to do that, and it was always one of those I'd like to someday. I went ahead and made one of these crazy little critters, and then made another one. This one is a Hobby Lobby. I love this cotton. Again, these do need to be cotton usually. Every hospital has a little bit different requirements, but that's what we were told. And then this one is Knit Picks Dishy. I don't want to malign this yarn at all, but I didn't enjoy doing dishcloths with this. Probably because I do more face cloths than I do actual like dishwashing cloths. It was a little bit stiff, maybe is the best word to me. But the reason that I didn't like it for dishcloths is what makes it perfect for something like this. So it stands up, you can squish it, but yet it holds its shape. And boy, the colors are just fun in the dishy. So I used a little bit different pattern for this one. I have to put the eyes on, and there's some patterns for like little hats and bow ties and things like that. So I may play a little bit more with this. Again, they're cotton, so it's not something that I typically sit down and do a whole one at a certain time. But I might do like the head and then do the tentacles later. But I was having some issues with, it's not a bad pattern. It's just that you start at the top of the head and you crochet down the head in a spiral, and then you flip that, you're working with it upside down, and then you start working on these tentacles. Well, that little head, because it's stuffed, and actually I use quilt batting in there because I have it, and also because quilt batting, I use little scraps when we trim off a quilt. There's always little pieces of batting, and I have lots of that, and people are always asking if I want more scraps, and I usually say yes because I don't want them throwing them away. But what I can do is the quilt batting has what's called, the polyester anyway, has it's called scrim. It's kind of like almost a bonding on one side, or some of it is needle punched. It's what keeps that quilt batting from coming apart, drifting apart, and making like balls in your quilt. So there's kind of a process that presses it together, keeps it together, kind of, it's not hard, it's not really glued, it's almost like anyway, if you look at a piece of quilt batting, you'll know what I mean. So what I do is tear that into pieces and use that to stuff stuff. My experience has been that it doesn't migrate through stitches as easily. So because of that bonding. And what I really like is the ones that are needle punched. And some of the, especially the cotton, like the 100% cotton batting will do that. So that's what I used to stuff my little critters with. And, but anyway, it got a little bit heavy to hold like that to work on those tentacles. So I kind of rewrote my own version of this, and I got one that I did this morning to show you. What I do is crochet the head in a single piece, cut the yarn end, weave in my tail. And then what I do, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you this, but right here, when I get to that round, which is like 2 rounds from the end, I do if you can see that little ridge, I do a back loop only crochet, and this is all single crochets, but that makes that little ridge there. And then I make my tentacles as a separate piece, like that. Nice little beard. And then I will literally knot this together so it's a little like tutu sort of thing. And then I'll line up, let me just go ahead and knot this so I can show you. And if this works, for me so far I've only done 2 of them this way, but if it works, I'm hoping to kind of maybe write this up as a pattern suggestion. So I have my little tutu and my little center, and then I'll just line this up like that around that, and this comes out just about perfect. So there's my little ridge row, and there's my tentacles, and then I'll just take one of my ends here and whip stitch using that little ridge to whip stitch it around. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but when that is all done and sewn together, flip it upside down and you have your little octopus. So this is the way I am making my octopus right now, and having a lot of fun with it. So I might take these to our guild and have them donated to the NICU, but I'm also thinking that this could be a good thing to, again, take to our local nursing home and see if this would work for people with dementia. Again, just something to pull on to. The size of the head is just about perfect for hand size. So I think it would be easy, and I can very easily put another little loop on the back of that to, you know, put on like a hand or fingers, and just something to comb, to play with. So these are wonderful projects, whether they go to a NICU or to an Alzheimer's unit. I think these have been, and they've just been flat fun to make. So I am on my third one and having a lot of fun with that. The other project that I've been doing is these little kid size socks. So I have 2 pairs made. I had one, I think it was this one actually, I've had all done except the cast off for probably 1.5 years or 2 years. And I had actually run out of yarn. I use these when I make, these are Peyton's Croy, and I love to make myself socks out of those, but I have fairly small feet. So when I get done, I have, and Peyton's comes in 50-gram balls. So you use 1 for each sock, so that when I'm done, I have 2 little mini balls left over. I weighed these this morning, and they were 14 grams a piece. I didn't weigh, now I can't remember, I think it was these that I did. Anyway, one pair is obviously longer than the other, and one pair was 14 grams a piece. Sock, not a pair, but a sock was 14 grams. So a 14-gram ball, and I can make a sock. And then these will go to, our church does a shoe drive every summer. We work with a group that does, that takes shoes and socks, brand new shoes and socks, to different places all over the world. And what I like about this group is they actually send their volunteers, like it goes with people that are going to these locations, and there's some in the US, there's some in I think just about every continent, and they will take shoes and socks with them and actually try them on kids. So I don't know what size that's needed. These are with the Peyton's Croy, and I believe this is a size US 2, and it's just a 48 stitch little sock, garter heel, and basically, like, this one is short because it was I didn't have a lot of yarn left with this one, so I made a pair of shorties, and then this one I had a little bit more yarn left. I want to say that I made some mug cozies out of my pieces on that, so I didn't have as much. This one I was able to use up all of the balls of yarn, and I made a little bit longer sock. So there you go. I need to get some of those kid size blockers. These I can do a sock easily in a day, usually, and great purse knitting. So I've gotten, this last week I've gotten 3 of these done, and I have another pair that I just put on the needles. So anyway, I like where these are going, because like I said, they are going to be put with people that know the kids and can try them on, and I don't have to worry about a size, and they will find a child that fits them. So I know that those will go to good homes. and just a lot of fun. And then our church does, the reason we started doing this in the summer is because we keep the shoe boxes from the shoes that are donated. We keep those until the fall when we do Operation Christmas Child. In October, November, we fill those boxes, and I like to have a few like washcloths, a knit toy, and a pair of knit socks, something like that I can put into those boxes. So I'll probably donate most of these here in just a couple months, and then I'll be working on some for Operation Christmas Child. So I think those are the projects I've got so far. If you have suggestions, like I said, these are projects that I've known about and just never, I always said I don't have the time, but actually I've just not taken the time. I really wanted to do those octopus. I really liked the idea of, I've had, like I said, the socks I started a couple years ago and just never took the time to actually complete those and make any more. So I'm trying to discipline myself to take that time out of my crafting, creating time and be able to. I'm not limiting myself to just this. I've got a couple other things that I had already committed to, and I'll talk about those. But it's really nice to see how much time I really do have if I take it intentionally. And I'm enjoying that. But all that to say, are there certain things that you have found you enjoy making for donation, projects that you donate to, and not just that, I don't want to do something that I enjoy just because I enjoy it. I want something that I can enjoy making, but then it's going to be useful on the flip side of that equation. So I want things that are going to be useful. I have a couple baby patterns that I'm probably going to be making. I don't have a lot of, all of these, when you give to a certain entity or, you know, certain foundation, whatever, a lot of times there's very specific criteria, and that's good because I don't want to donate something that can't be used. In NICU, a lot of times they will send things through a sterilizer. Well, if you have all acrylic yarn, it can actually melt. I don't want to ruin their sterilizer, and I don't want my knitting ruined. So I want to follow those guidelines. But sometimes you need different, because I have different kinds of yarns, I need different things to use them for. Wow, that was a tangent. All of what I was trying to say is, what kinds of things do you make for donations? What should I be looking into? Do you have suggestions of things that you have seen used? I would like to add some more to my repertoire. So really enjoying that. Let's see, and then I kind of flip things around. Spinning, I haven't done as much as I would like to. I am about halfway. I'm distracted because I'm looking at my spinning wheel, my Elizabeth over there, and I am about halfway through the horned Dorset for the Shave 'em to Save 'em. I am so excited. There have been a number of people that have commented that they have joined, and I'm really excited. And so far, the conversations that have been happening on Facebook and Ravelry groups about it, there's a lot of people finding a lot of new to them fibers and really enjoying them. I am working on horned Dorset. I don't think this will be my last horned Dorset. It is really fun to spin. The prep on this fiber is phenomenal. It's probably the easiest long draw I have ever done. So I will be probably purchasing some more from Covered Bridge Farms. So really liking that. I also made a little bit of a purchase here a couple weeks ago. I have a good friend that decided she wanted to try spindle spinning as well. She wanted to try spinning and thought a spindle would be the best way to start out. So we were talking and looking at some things on Etsy, and I said, well, you might want to look at the Turtle Made 3D printed spindles. I've heard good things, never tried them, but you know, I've heard people say that they're a great entry-level spindle. They're not terribly expensive, they're good, and they come in really cute colors. So she was looking, and the more I helped her look, the more I wanted one. So we tend to enable each other, and there's 3 of us at work that that knit and crochet and spin, and we tend to get each other in trouble. But I picked out this cute little critter. And I do mean little. This is the Turtle Made Nano. It is, I believe, 3.5 inches. I can't remember, and I don't have a ruler real handy. It is the second to smallest spindle that she makes. It weighs 1/4 ounce, and I am having so much fun with this little critter. It's not the fanciest spindle I've ever had. It's not the most expensive it's probably the cheapest spindle I've ever had. But it does a good job. I am really enjoying the size. I have literally put it in my purse and taken it out at work at lunch, and boy, does that raise some eyebrows in the lunchroom. But it's done a good job of spinning a nice fine yarn. It does like to backspin, and I think that's just because of the size, the weight of it. I don't know a lot about all the ins and outs, the mechanics of these spindles, but I am having a blast, and it's kind of fun to have. This is kind of like the purse knitting equivalent of spinning. So it has been a lot of fun, and it is just so tiny. I knew it was small, and then when it came and we took it out of the package, it was like, oh my word. I don't know if you can tell there the size of it, but tiny, and a lot of fun. I am really hoping the next fiber festival that I have a chance to go to, that I will be able to maybe look at some of the spindle makers that I know I enjoy and see about getting maybe another little wooden one. I have several projects that I think would be really fun, and these spin a fine yarn too. They like to spin really thin yarns. So there's my latest spinning acquisition, and then what I am spinning on it is, I told you that I was going to wait until better weather before I did any more natural dyeing so that I could do it outside and not stink up the house, have better ventilation like you're supposed to. But I got impatient, and I had a big stack of avocado pits and seeds that were dried and ready to dye with. So I got out more of my Romney and get it over here, and dyed up some avocado Romney yarn. So you can tell this was the first, well, maybe you can't because of the light, but that was the first dye bath, and then each subsequent dye bath just got a little bit lighter. So I actually did about 100 grams. I think this was the third one. It's slightly lighter yet. So just a real pale peachy color, pale pink. And I decided my friend that decided she wanted to learn how to spin, I gave her a pluff ball, and actually I didn't do the best job dyeing. I kind of felted it just a little bit. So we ran it through the other night she was over, and we ran some of it through my drum carder, and boy did it puff up. Just very, very nice. So this is Romney from a local shepherd, Darlene Megley, and I had it spun. I think I talked about this before. But we are working on hand spinning, and it's just so soft, I keep petting it. We are working on spinning up some yarn for the mystery gnome along that Imagined Landscape is starting tonight. So tonight she is coming over, and we are having a cast-on party for our mystery gnomes, and really excited about this goofy little thing. So we thought maybe starting her project, you need little tiny hands and a little button nose basically on this little gnome. So it says 5 yards with 15% extra added into that total. So you don't need but a few yards. So she was going to try to spin up some of this avocado to make the hands and nose out of. And she's doing a great job for just starting out. And I'm hoping I need to get this off and plied. But typically on Sarah Schira's patterns, her gnomes that I've seen in the past anyway, the nose and the hands are kind of towards the end of the pattern. This is a 20-day, every 5 days a new clue comes out, with today being the first one. Typically she starts with the hats on these gnomes. So, and we did get the first, I've peeked at the pattern. I'm trying to be good and not starting till tonight, but typically she starts with the hats, and sure enough, that's where we are starting. So I did this little ball of this is what I'm working on sampling for my cooped up sweater. So I did a little bit of this, just long draw, and 2-plied it. And I thought I had oodles and gobs. And then I put it on my Nitty Knotty when I pulled it off the spinning wheel, and I did this one on my Ashford Joy. And I thought I had plenty spun up, and it turns out this is really only about half of what I need. So fortunately, when the pattern came out today, it's only the first half of the hat pattern. So I should have enough to get me started tonight, and then I will, in the next few days, try to spin up another little gumball that I can use to finish the hat. So this is my hat. I've been spinning on that this week. Last time I showed you what I was going to use for the beard, and I do have enough of that. I have not spun, and then this is going to be my hands and nose. I have not done the spinning for the body of the gnome. And I have a couple things that I spun up. I think I showed you the blue last time, but it's a little bit heavier than what this came out. The pattern is written for fingering weight. These are close to fingering weight. I know that the little avocado is going to be fingering weight. I'll be good there. But the blue is a little bit heavier. So if I don't get anything else done, I could do that, and it will go well with these two colors. There's kind of my fallback plan. I really wanted to do this all in hand spun, but if I don't have the time, I was given a little mini a while back, and it didn't have a label, so I don't know who the dyer is, but this is so cute, and it's got the greens and the blues and the yellows in it. I think it would make a darling spring gnome. So if I don't get anything else spun up for it, this is kind of like my fallback. I know I have enough yardage there, it'll be fine. So I'm still hoping. I've got probably another 12 days or so, 12-15 days before I need the body. So yeah, we'll just see how much time I have if I get around to it, or if I just go ahead and go with the alternate plan. But at least I've got enough that tonight I can get all ready to go. And then we'll see what happens with the other. It only needs, I think for the body, you need like 60, 68 yards, something like that. So it shouldn't take me very long, but this was only 35 yards and I thought I had plenty. So we'll see. That's my spinning goals. I think that's everything I had on my list to show you. That ended up being a lot. Don't have a whole lot yet to share as far as homesteading stuff. I was able to get my turmeric all potted up, and the worms, quick worm update, the worms are doing great. I actually added a second layer to my worm composter. The one that I am using right now is a vertical system where you add trays and go up, and the theory being that you bait the worms from, you put food in the new tray and it draws the worms up out of the old tray and into the new, and they just magically stay up here, and then you can harvest from that first tray underneath. It works. It does work. I have put the new tray in, and I checked it after about a week. I had some bananas that were in the freezer that I never made banana bread with, and so I put those up, and they love bananas. They love any kind of fruit. So worms have a sweet tooth. So I baited it with some fruit, and sure enough, a few days later, I went back to check on him, and I pulled that tray up, and there were all these worms hanging, dangling from the tray. It was, if you're a worm farmer, it was really neat. So I am still doing the worms. I actually have plans to order another composting method. I've made a second bin, and I'm getting ready to order another variety of worms. I didn't know that there were varieties of worms. So I am learning a lot, but I think I'm going to get some African night crawlers to put in that bin, and then I may be looking at getting a whole nother different kind of a continuous feed worm system, they call it, because you add food to the top and it actually, the worms eat their way up and then you can harvest from the bottom. It's just a little bit different, supposedly a much easier method of doing it. We'll see. But I'm definitely enjoying it and definitely continuing on that. And seeing, I'm ready, just about ready to harvest for the first time out of my initial worm farm. So I will let you know how that goes, and then hopefully I'll have enough that I can start my seedlings. As the seedlings grow and need some fertilizer, I can use the worm castings for that. So that's about as far as I am on my homestead goals right now. We have a lot of seeds started. I did start the loofah sponges. I have those. Those are going to be interesting. It's going to take every day of our season to be able to grow those, and I'm really hopeful that I'll be able to get some harvested. So that's the update there. I talked to my friend that was keeping my bees, not my bees. I had given her my woodenware from the bees that did not make it. She had my wooden, the wooden hive parts, and had caught a swarm and put in there. And apparently that swarm did not make it over the winter. So she said, I've got really bad news. I've got some bad news for you. And I said, well, I've got plenty to work on right now to keep myself occupied. So we're just going to say that God knew I didn't need something else to distract me this summer, and we'll call it good news. And with bees, there have been a lot of losses reported so far on bees. So yeah, so I'm kind of a little bit bummed, and yet maybe slightly, hate to say relieved, but I'm going to keep the woodenware at her house, and if she has more to divide this spring, I'll go over and help her with some of those, hopefully, and if we have some swarms that we can catch, I may bring those back home as well. So I am gearing up on spring projects. I may be ordering some more leaf cutter bees. I will let you know about those. They are a lot of fun. And starting to look, people are starting to post monarchs coming back. The monarchs have left Mexico, or starting to leave Mexico, and they're making their migration. So people in the very south of the US are starting to report seeing new monarchs coming up, and it'll be probably another 8 to 10 weeks before we start seeing them here. But it's gonna be here before we know it. I was looking at my butterfly raising equipment just last week and thinking, boy, it's time to start thinking about that, getting all the equipment out. So bees, butterflies, and worms. The chickens are convinced that it is spring despite what the weather says, and they are basically at full laying capacity. So I am collecting, I have 11 hens right now. One of those 11 is 5 years old, a little more than. So she is kind of at the end of her laying capacity. But the others are laying, I'm getting anywhere from 4 to 8 eggs a day. So I am giving away eggs and enjoying eating a lot of eggs. And this morning I had to go get chicken feed, and when I went in the feed store, I was immediately heard the chirping. They had their baby chicks in and baby ducklings. I had to take some video of that, and I'll pop that in at the end. So very busy time. Things are springing to life for sure, and it's going to get busy here soon. So thank you so much for joining me, for sitting with me through my ramblings. Like I said, I hope some of it piques your interest. I would love some feedback as far as donation ideas and what kinds of charity knitting, donation knitting, crocheting that you do. I'm really having fun. So thank you for popping in. Thank you for your attention, for your time every episode. I really truly appreciate it, and thank you for all your comments. It's so much fun to interact with you guys. So Until I see you again, I hope you have a wonderful, busy couple weeks ahead. I know I will, and I will see you back here before long. Until then, may your gathering basket just explode with life and blessings. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.